infamous Karen making final way out with one last desperate attempt with the guards. She wasn't the kind of person who blended into a crowd. She had a presence, a way of speaking and acting that seemed to demand that the world notice her. People in her neighborhood knew her well, and she had earned a reputation that followed her from place to place. Some people admired her confidence, while others were quietly wary of crossing her path. Karen had never tried to hide who she was. She lived life loudly, sometimes in ways that made others uncomfortable, but she carried on with a sense of pride and determination that was hard to ignore. From a young age, Karen had been outspoken. She would challenge teachers, question rules, and often insist that her way of thinking was the correct way. Some adults saw this as stubbornness, while others called it determination. Over time, those traits developed into a unique personality that was difficult for anyone to overlook. As Karen grew older, her interactions with others began to shape the reputation that would later define her. She worked in different offices, restaurants, and shops, and everywhere she went, people remembered her. It wasn't always in a positive way, but her presence was always felt. Karen's reputation was built slowly, with a series of small incidents that left lasting impressions. She had a knack for standing up for herself in ways that were bold and sometimes shocking. Once, at a local cafe, she had argued with a manager over a simple misunderstanding. Most people would have let it go, but Karen didn't. She spoke her mind, pointing out what she thought was unfair treatment, insisting that her point be heard. By the time the argument ended, a small crowd had gathered, watching the situation unfold. Some admired her courage, while others whispered about her behavior. That moment, like many others, added to her growing reputation as someone who would not back down, no matter the consequences. Her interactions weren't always confrontational, though. Karen could also be charming when she wanted. She knew how to smile, how to speak persuasively, and how to make people feel as though they were the most important person in the room. This skill helped her navigate many situations that might have been difficult for someone else. But even in her charm, there was a sense of unpredictability. People never quite knew what Karen would do next, and that uncertainty made her both fascinating and frustrating to be around. Over the years, Karen had several encounters with security guards at different venues. Some of these encounters were minor, a disagreement over seating, a misunderstanding about rules, but others were more serious. These events became stories that people shared quietly among themselves. "Watch out when Karen comes in," some would say. "She'll test the limits, but you never know what she'll do next." It was a mix of warning and admiration, a recognition that Karen had a way of making her presence known in a room. Karen herself didn't think much about the stories people told. She had her own sense of right and wrong, her own understanding of fairness, and she lived according to her own rules. If she felt mistreated, she spoke up. If she thought someone was being unfair, she confronted them. In her mind, it wasn't about causing trouble. It was about standing up for herself and for what she believed was right. This mindset had guided her throughout her life, and it was the reason her reputation had become so well known. Despite her boldness, Karen was not without fear or hesitation. She felt nervous in certain situations, especially when she knew there could be consequences for her actions. But she had learned to manage that fear, to use it as fuel rather than a limitation. When she entered a place where security was present, she could feel the tension in the air, the subtle glances from staff, the quiet assessments of her behavior. Karen had a way of noticing these things, and she often used them to her advantage. She knew how to test boundaries without immediately crossing the line, most of the time. Karen's life was filled with ordinary moments as well. She shopped at local markets, visited friends, and spent evenings watching television or reading. But even in these ordinary moments, there was a sense that Karen was always aware of her surroundings. She noticed people's expressions, the way others moved, the small details that often went unnoticed. This awareness contributed to her ability to act quickly and decisively in situations that might surprise others. It also reinforced her reputation, as people could sense that she was always in control, always observing, always ready to act if necessary. As she moved through the city, Corinne often reflected on her life. She thought about the choices she had made, the arguments she had had, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Some of these reflections were quiet and private, moments where she considered what she might have done differently. Others were more practical, focusing on what she needed to do next or how she could navigate a tricky situation. Despite her outward confidence, Corinne had a thoughtful side, a part of her that considered the consequences of her actions and tried to understand the world around her. People who encountered Corinne often found themselves unsure how to react. She could be both demanding and reasonable, confrontational and charming, all within a few minutes. This unpredictability made her fascinating to some and exhausting to others. Staff at venues where she had previously caused disruptions had learned to recognize her approach. They could anticipate her actions to some degree, but they never felt entirely prepared. Corinne had a way of keeping people on their toes, a skill that had developed naturally over many years. Corinne's reputation had become almost legendary in some circles. Stories about her spread from one place to another, sometimes exaggerated, sometimes accurate. People told tales of her boldness, her sharp words, and her uncanny ability to test limits without immediately getting caught. These stories made Corinne a well-known figure, a person who could cause a stir simply by showing up. And while some of the attention was negative, she didn't seem to mind. In fact, she often seemed to thrive on it, using it as motivation to continue living life on her own terms. Yet beneath the surface, Corinne was not invincible. She experienced doubt, frustration, and disappointment just like anyone else. There were times when she wished she could be seen differently, moments when she longed for understanding rather than conflict. These feelings, however, did not stop her from acting according to her own beliefs. They were a part of her, adding depth to her character and making her more human in the eyes of those who took the time to look beyond the surface. In this first part of Corinne's story, the foundation is laid. The audience sees a woman who is bold, determined, and unafraid to challenge the world around her. Her reputation is well established, built through years of outspoken behavior, careful observation, and an unshakable belief in her own sense of right and wrong. She is both admired and criticized, fascinating and frustrating, but always unmistakably herself. This sets the stage for the events that will follow, where Corinne's confidence and audacity will lead her into situations that test her limits and reveal the true extent of her determination. Corinne had started her day with a sense of calm, but there was an underlying excitement in the air. She knew that the evening ahead might be challenging. For her, life often involved small tests of patience, courage, and wit, and tonight was no different. She had been to the upscale venue several times before, and each visit had left a mark, sometimes a story, sometimes a warning, but always an impression. Corinne was aware that security would notice her before she even entered, and part of the thrill was seeing how far she could push the boundaries. The venue was bustling with people when Corinne arrived. The music was lively, the lights soft and welcoming, and the air smelled faintly of fresh flowers mixed with the aroma of fine food. Staff moved efficiently, guiding guests to their tables, checking reservations, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. In the corner, the security team was alert, quietly monitoring the crowd for any signs of trouble. Corinne, with her sharp eyes and instinctive awareness, could sense their presence immediately. She noted the way they stood, the way they scanned the room, and the subtle signs that they were prepared for anyone trying to cause a disturbance. As Corinne walked in, she held her head high, exuding confidence and calm. To a casual observer, she might have seemed like any other patron, simply enjoying an evening out. But those who knew her reputation were alert. They recognized the quiet tension in her movements, the slight spark in her eyes that hinted at mischief, curiosity, or even challenge. Karen enjoyed this subtle game. It was not about confrontation alone. It was about seeing how people reacted to her, how much control she could exert without breaking the rules entirely. Karen approached the reception area and greeted the staff with a polite smile. She made small talk, complimenting the Daker and asking a few light questions about the evening's events. To the staff, she appeared friendly and composed, but Karen was carefully observing their reactions. She noticed the slight hesitation in the receptionist's voice, the way one of the security guards shifted his weight, and the subtle nods exchanged between staff members. Every detail mattered to her. These small observations allowed Karen to plan her next moves, predicting how people might respond to her behavior. The tension began to build slowly. Karen made her way toward a table in the center of the room, moving deliberately, almost as if she wanted to be noticed without drawing too much attention. Along the way, she engaged in polite conversations with other guests, offering compliments and sharing small anecdotes from her life. These interactions seemed harmless on the surface, but they were part of Karen's approach. She liked to keep everyone slightly off balance, unsure whether she would follow the rules exactly or test them just enough to see what would happen. Karen's instincts were sharp. She could sense the staff's reactions almost immediately. A waiter hesitated slightly before pouring her drink, a security guard's gaze lingered longer than usual, and a manager discreetly signaled to another staff member. Karen felt a quiet thrill. This was the game she enjoyed, the subtle tension, the unspoken challenge, and the knowledge that she was navigating the situation skillfully. She was aware of her reputation, and she used it to her advantage, understanding that people were watching, judging, and anticipating her next move. It wasn't long before a small incident occurred that increased the tension. Karen had requested a slight change in her seating arrangement. The table she wanted was technically reserved, and the staff initially hesitated. Karen spoke calmly but firmly, explaining her preference and offering to wait for a brief moment if necessary. Her tone was polite, but there was a clear undercurrent of insistence that made the staff realize she was serious. The manager approached, trying to handle the situation with care. Karen listened attentively, nodding, and then smiled when a compromise was reached. While the issue was resolved without conflict, the subtle tension had already set the stage for the evening. Karen's interactions were a careful balance of politeness and assertiveness. She knew how to maintain control while keeping her behavior within acceptable limits. Her charm played a critical role. By showing friendliness and gratitude at key moments, she softened the staff's initial apprehension, making them more willing to accommodate her requests. Yet beneath her polite exterior, Karen's mind was constantly active, anticipating possible challenges and preparing responses. She was aware that one small misstep could escalate the situation, and she wanted to remain in control at all times. As the evening progressed, the room became livelier. Music played, conversations flowed, and the atmosphere grew more animated. Karen continued to engage with staff and other guests, maintaining her composure while carefully observing the reactions around her. Every glance, every slight movement, every tone of voice told her something important. Karen was particularly focused on the security team. She watched how they positioned themselves, how they monitored the crowd, and how they communicated discreetly with one another. Their presence added excitement to the evening. She enjoyed testing the boundaries without crossing them too quickly. Karen decided to try a small, subtle challenge. She approached the area near the private lounge, a space that was usually restricted to staff and special guests. She did not rush or act suspiciously. Instead, she moved with purpose, as if she had legitimate business in the area. Security noticed and one guard stepped forward, ready to redirect her politely. Karen paused, smiled, and engaged the guard in light conversation. She complimented the venue, asked questions about the layout, and gently hinted at her interest in the private lounge. It was a calculated test, a way to see how far she could push the limits without causing a direct conflict. The guard handled the situation professionally. He explained the rules politely and redirected Karen to her table. She complied, but there was a sense of playful tension between them. Karen felt satisfaction in the small victory of having engaged the security guard in conversation and having tested the boundaries. She returned to her table, continuing her evening as if nothing had happened, but internally she noted every reaction, every response, and every subtle shift in the staff's behavior. These observations would guide her for the rest of the evening. Karen's ability to remain calm and composed in situations of mild tension was part of what made her reputation so compelling. While many people might have reacted with frustration, anger, or anxiety, Karen thrived on the challenge. She enjoyed understanding the dynamics of the room, the interactions of people, and the strategies she could use to maintain her influence without causing serious disruption. This skill had been honed over years of experience, and it allowed her to navigate complex social situations with ease. As the night continued, Karen noticed other patrons whispering and glancing her way. Some were curious about her, some recognized her from previous visits, and some simply watched quietly, unsure of what to expect. Karen did not let their attention distract her. Instead, she used it as motivation, maintaining her poise and carefully observing everyone around her. She had learned that awareness and composure were powerful tools, and she wielded them skillfully. The evening began to build toward a subtle climax. Karen's interactions with staff and guests became more layered, each exchange carrying a sense of anticipation. She asked questions that required careful responses, engaged in small negotiations about seating and service, and maintained a steady awareness of the security team's positions. Each moment was a small test, a way for her to measure the reactions of those around her and to refine her strategy. Karen's reputation as someone who could navigate such situations with confidence and subtlety was well earned, and tonight she demonstrated it once again. By the time dessert was served, the tension in the room had shifted from uncertainty to quiet respect. Staff and security were aware of Karen's presence, her careful observations, and her subtle challenges. Karen herself felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had navigated the evening's interactions with skill and grace. She had tested boundaries, maintained composure, and left an impression on everyone present. The night was far from over, and Karen's story was just beginning, but the foundation for what was to come had been firmly established. Karen had spent the evening testing boundaries with subtlety, but now a stronger sense of daring began to rise within her. The calm, measured approach that had guided her so far no longer satisfied her. She wanted to push further, to see how much control she truly had over the situation. The energy in the room, the presence of the guards, and the curious glances of other patrons combined to create a thrill she could not ignore. Tonight, she decided, would be different. Her mind worked quickly, planning each step with care. Karen had learned over the years that a well-thought-out approach could often achieve more than a sudden, reckless move. She observed the security guards closely, noting their positions, movements, and interactions with the staff. Each guard had a slightly different style. One was more attentive, another more patient, and a third seemed to trust instinct over rules. Karen knew that understanding these differences would be crucial for her next moves. With careful timing, Karen shifted her position in the room. She stood, appearing as though she were stretching or adjusting her coat, and casually made her way toward the area that led to the back sections of the venue. It was a space usually reserved for staff, performers, and VIP guests. Corinne walked with an air of casual confidence, her eyes scanning the surroundings as if she had every right to be there. Security noticed her movement immediately. A guard began to follow at a respectful distance, ready to step in if necessary. Corinne's heart beat faster, not with fear but with excitement. She felt the adrenaline of testing her limits, of pushing into a space that was not meant for her. Her mind remained sharp, calculating every possibility, anticipating the responses of the staff and security. She was aware of the risk, but she also knew that she had prepared for moments like this. Her strategy was clear: observe, engage politely if challenged, and test boundaries without causing outright conflict. As she approached a narrow corridor leading to a private area, Corinne's presence drew attention. A security guard stepped forward, speaking in a calm but firm voice. "Excuse me, this area is restricted." Corinne paused, giving the guard a polite smile. "I was just curious about the layout," she said, her tone light and conversational. "I promise I won't interfere with anything." The guard studied her carefully. Corinne could feel the unspoken tension as he weighed whether to allow her a brief passage or redirect her immediately. Corinne waited patiently, maintaining her composure. She knew that showing frustration or impatience would weaken her position. Her calm demeanor and friendly tone worked to her advantage. After a moment, the guard gestured for her to step aside, not allowing her further into the restricted space, but acknowledging her polite approach. Corinne thanked him graciously, retreating slightly but maintaining an alert awareness of her surroundings. Even in this small interaction, she had gained insight into the guard's personality, his patience, and his approach to handling unexpected situations. Corinne returned to the main area, blending in with other guests as she moved, but she did not relax completely. Her plan was only partially tested and she wanted more. She observed a side door near the kitchen area, a section usually accessible only to staff. Tonight, it appeared less monitored, with the guards focused on the main hall and the crowd. Corinne's mind raced. She considered her options carefully, weighing risk against reward. She decided to take a calculated chance, a move that required subtlety, patience, and careful timing. With deliberate steps, Corinne approached the door, appearing as though she were interested in the menu posted nearby. She glanced at the guards, noting their positions and gestures. One guard was engaged in conversation with a staff member, while another adjusted equipment near the main entrance. The moment felt right. Corinne slowly reached for the door handle, pretending to adjust it slightly as if she were checking for a flaw in the frame or a sign on the door. Her body language was casual, but her mind was entirely focused on the challenge ahead. As she lingered near the door, a small interaction occurred that increased her awareness of the tension in the room. A staff member approached, smiling politely. "Can I help you?" he asked. Corinne turned to him with a friendly expression. "Just curious about the kitchen layout," she said lightly. "I promise I'm not causing trouble." The staff member laughed quietly, sensing no real threat. "This area is for staff only, but feel free to ask any questions you want." Corinne thanked him, nodding graciously and stepped back. Though she had not succeeded in entering the restricted space, she had managed to maintain control of the interaction while observing reactions carefully. Corinne's confidence grew with each successful, subtle maneuver. She realized that her presence alone influenced those around her. People watched her movements, assessed her intentions, and adjusted their behavior accordingly. This awareness gave her a sense of power, not in a harmful way, but as a recognition of her skill in navigating complex social dynamics. Corinne's mind was sharp, and she relished the challenge of balancing politeness, assertiveness, and observation in a single evening. The night progressed, and Corinne's daring continued. She found small opportunities to engage with security and staff, each interaction carefully measured. She asked questions that required thoughtful responses, complimented the staff at strategic moments, and moved subtly toward areas that were typically off-limits. With each step, she tested boundaries, gauging how far she could go without overstepping the rules. The thrill was in the balance, the fine line between curiosity and overreach, between challenge and respect. At one point, Karen noticed a brief lapse in the guards' attention. One of them had moved to assist another staff member, creating a small gap in coverage near a hallway that led to the storage area. Karen's eyes lit up with quiet determination. She knew that this was a momentary opportunity. She walked slowly, casually, and deliberately in the direction of the hallway. Her movements were smooth, her demeanor calm, as if she had every right to be there. Every detail mattered: the pace of her steps, the tilt of her head, the way she made eye contact with those around her. Karen's heart raced slightly, but not with fear. It was the excitement of the challenge, the thrill of testing limits, and the anticipation of seeing how far she could push without causing a serious incident. She approached the hallway cautiously, prepared to engage politely with any staff or guard who might intervene. Her mind was focused, her senses alert. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to see how her careful observations, strategic thinking, and confident presence could allow her to navigate a restricted area. Just as she reached the entrance to the hallway, a security guard stepped forward. Karen smiled warmly, keeping her tone friendly. "I was just looking around," she said softly, "not causing any trouble, I promise." The guard studied her carefully, clearly assessing her intentions. Karen held her ground, maintaining a calm and composed posture, allowing the guard to feel her sincerity without giving up her curiosity. After a brief pause, he nodded slightly, signaling that she could proceed a few steps before returning to the main area. Karen thanked him quietly and moved a few feet into the hallway, careful not to overstep. Even in this small victory, Karen felt a surge of satisfaction. She had tested boundaries, engaged thoughtfully with security, and observed reactions, all without causing any real conflict. Her confidence grew, as did her awareness of the subtle social dynamics at play. She realized that the evening's events were not just about testing limits. They were about understanding people, reading cues, and maintaining composure in high-pressure situations. Each small maneuver added to her knowledge, preparing her for the challenges that lay ahead. As Karen retreated back to the main area, she reflected on her actions. She had navigated subtle challenges, engaged with guards and staff politely, and observed reactions with careful attention. The night was far from over, and the possibility of further opportunities remained. Karen felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had pushed boundaries without crossing lines, and that she had maintained control in a complex, dynamic environment. The thrill of this careful, calculated approach was intoxicating, and Karen knew that the best was yet to come. Karen had tested boundaries carefully all evening, but now the tension reached a peak. The subtle games of observation and polite negotiation were no longer enough. She felt a strong urge to push further, to see how far she could go before the situation reached its limit. The guards were alert, and she knew they were watching her closely. Yet, Karen had spent years developing her instincts and reading people, and she believed that her careful approach could give her an advantage. The moment came when a narrow passage near the staff-only area appeared less monitored. Karen's sharp eyes noticed that one of the guards had turned to help a new staff member, creating a small window of opportunity. Her heart raced with excitement, not fear. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to see if her careful planning, composure, and subtle charm could allow her to navigate a restricted space without causing serious disruption. Karen moved deliberately, keeping her steps measured, her posture confident, and her expression calm. As she approached the corridor, a guard stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. "This area is restricted, ma'am. I need you to stay here." Karen stopped, smiling gently. "I understand, and I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just curious about how the back area works," she said softly. Her tone was polite but confident, demonstrating that she respected the rules while maintaining a presence that was hard to ignore. The guard hesitated, clearly assessing whether to insist immediately or allow a brief explanation. Karen's mind raced, calculating the best approach to keep the situation under control while testing limits. Karen's ability to remain calm under scrutiny was a crucial skill. She spoke slowly, choosing words that were friendly yet assertive. "I promise I won't go far. I just like to understand how things work. Maybe you could show me a little." The guard looked at her carefully, weighing the possibilities. Karen noticed the subtle signs of his thought process, the tilt of his head, the slight shift of his weight, and the movement of his hands. She had learned that reading these small cues could give her the insight needed to navigate tense situations successfully. After a tense moment, the guard nodded slightly, allowing Karen to move a few steps into the hallway. Karen thanked him quietly, taking small, careful steps while keeping her eyes on the surroundings. She observed every detail: the placement of staff, the movements of other guards, and the layout of the restricted area. Every observation added to her awareness, helping her anticipate any potential challenges before they arose. Karen's strategy was methodical: advance carefully, observe, engage politely if needed, and retreat gracefully if confronted. As Karen explored the hallway, a staff member approached. She stopped and greeted him with a friendly smile. "I hope I'm not causing any trouble," she said warmly. "I'm just curious about the space." The staff member, sensing her polite demeanor and genuine curiosity, responded kindly. "This area is usually off-limits, but as long as you stay close to the entrance, it's okay." Karen nodded appreciatively, making mental notes of the layout and the staff's reactions. She understood that each interaction added to her knowledge of the space and the dynamics between staff and security. Karen's confidence grew with each successful interaction, but she remained aware of the delicate balance. One misstep could escalate the situation quickly. She moved further into the corridor, careful to remain visible to the guards and approachable to staff. Her movements were deliberate, yet natural, maintaining the appearance of casual curiosity rather than any intent to break rules. Karen knew that the thrill lay not in reckless action, but in the careful testing of boundaries while maintaining composure. As she walked, Karen noticed that one of the guards was watching her more closely than the others. She decided to engage him subtly, asking a question about the schedule for the evening and complimenting the staff's efficiency. The guard responded politely, and Karen smiled, keeping her tone light and friendly. She had learned that small, respectful interactions could reduce tension and give her more freedom to move while still respecting the authority of the guards. Every word, every gesture was carefully considered to maintain this balance. Despite her calm exterior, Karen felt the excitement building inside her. She had successfully tested the limits so far, but she knew the real challenge was coming, the moment when the guards would confront her more directly. She had anticipated this possibility and prepared for it mentally, rehearsing polite, calm, and assertive responses that would help her navigate the confrontation. Karen's years of experience in similar situations had taught her that composure and clarity of thought were more powerful than force or argument. The moment of confrontation arrived when another guard stepped into the hallway, blocking her path. His presence was firm but not aggressive, and his voice carried a calm authority. "Ma'am, I need you to return to the main area now." Karen paused, taking a slow breath. She smiled politely and replied, "Of course, I didn't mean to overstep. Thank you for your guidance." Her tone was respectful, yet confident, signaling that she understood the rules while maintaining her dignity. The guard nodded, signaling that she could retreat without incident. Corinne moved back toward the main hall, aware of the attention she was attracting from staff and other guards. She noticed the subtle shifts in posture, the quiet glances, and the small gestures that indicated heightened awareness. Rather than feeling intimidated, Corinne felt a sense of satisfaction. She had successfully navigated a tense situation, maintaining control while respecting the authority of the staff and security. Each interaction reinforced her understanding of social dynamics and the power of calm, polite assertiveness. Even as she retreated, Corinne's mind remained active. She reflected on the strategies she had used, the careful timing, the measured steps, the polite engagement, and the observation of subtle cues. Every decision had contributed to her ability to maintain composure and test boundaries without causing serious disruption. Corinne realized that her success lay not in defiance, but in careful planning, awareness, and the skillful use of social intelligence. The staff and security, meanwhile, were quietly impressed by Corinne's approach. She had challenged them subtly, tested their attentiveness, and yet handled each interaction with respect and grace. They noted her confidence, her calm demeanor, and her ability to navigate tension without escalating it unnecessarily. For them, the experience was a lesson in handling complex social situations with patience, observation, and clear communication. Corinne's presence, while challenging, had also provided an opportunity for learning and reflection. Corinne took a moment to breathe and observe the room once more. She had achieved her goal of testing boundaries while maintaining control, but she also recognized the importance of knowing when to stop. The night had provided excitement, challenge, and insight, and Corinne understood that every moment contributed to her understanding of herself and others. She had navigated the confrontation with skill, demonstrating the power of composure, observation, and polite assertiveness. As the evening wound down, Corinne reflected on the events that had unfolded. She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had tested her limits and learned from the experience. The guards had managed the situation professionally, and she had maintained her composure throughout. The night had been a careful balance of challenge and respect, excitement and observation, and Corinne had navigated it successfully. Even as she prepared to leave, Corinne's mind remained alert. She knew that her actions tonight would become part of the story others told about her, reinforcing her reputation as someone confident, observant, and capable of navigating difficult situations with skill. The evening had provided valuable lessons in patience, strategy, and social awareness, and Corinne felt a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that she had handled the confrontation with grace and intelligence. By the time Corinne exited the venue, the tension had dissipated. The guards and staff returned to their regular duties, and the other patrons continued enjoying the evening. Corinne walked away with a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had pushed boundaries, tested limits, and handled confrontation with poise. Her reputation as a bold, observant, and confident individual had been further solidified, and the lessons she had learned would guide her in future situations. The events of the night left a lasting impression on everyone involved. Corinne's ability to maintain composure, engage politely, and navigate tension demonstrated a level of social intelligence that few could match. For the guards and staff, it was a reminder of the importance of observation, patience, and clear communication. For Corinne, it was a night of subtle victories, careful strategy, and personal insight, an experience that would remain part of her story for years to come. Corinne walked out of the venue with a mix of relief and quiet pride. The night had tested her patience, courage, and wit, and she had navigated it successfully. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool air brushed against her face, making her feel alert and reflective. Her mind replayed the events of the evening, the careful steps, the polite conversations, the subtle tests of boundaries, and the brief moments of tension with the security guards. She knew she had handled the situation as gracefully as possible, yet she also understood that the experience had left its mark on both herself and those around her. As she moved through the quiet streets, Karen thought about the reactions of the staff and the guards. Each person she had interacted with had responded in their own way, some with caution, others with curiosity, and a few with subtle admiration. She realized that her presence had caused a ripple, small yet noticeable, throughout the venue. People had watched her carefully, judged her actions, and adjusted their behavior accordingly. Karen found it fascinating how much influence a single person could have in a controlled environment simply by being attentive, composed, and confident. Despite the excitement and challenge of the evening, Karen also felt a sense of introspection. She reflected on the choices she had made and the lessons she had learned. One thing had become clear: confidence and careful observation were powerful tools, but they came with responsibility. Pushing boundaries could create tension and test limits, but it was equally important to respect others and remain aware of the impact of her actions. Karen understood that her boldness was a part of her identity, yet she also recognized the importance of balancing it with thoughtfulness and awareness. As she continued walking, Karen thought about the stories that would spread about her tonight. People loved to share tales of bold actions, clever maneuvers, and moments of tension. Her interactions with the guards and staff, while handled politely and respectfully, would likely become part of her growing reputation. Karen smiled softly to herself, realizing that this was both a challenge and a reward. Being known for boldness and confidence brought recognition, but it also required her to remain mindful of her behavior and the way she affected others. Karen's thoughts turned inward as she considered how the night had shaped her understanding of herself. She had learned that composure under pressure was not just about outward appearances. It was about clarity of thought, careful planning, and the ability to read subtle social cues. Every glance, gesture, and tone of voice from those around her had provided information she could use to navigate complex situations. Karen appreciated the value of awareness and strategy, knowing that these skills could be applied not only in challenging social settings, but also in many aspects of her daily life. As she approached a quiet park on her route home, Karen found a bench and sat down to reflect. The evening's events played over in her mind like a series of small, connected scenes. She remembered the initial calm as she entered the venue, the growing tension as she tested boundaries, the subtle challenges with staff and guards, and the brief moments of confrontation in the restricted areas. Each moment had required careful attention, quick thinking, and a balance of assertiveness and respect. Karen felt a quiet sense of accomplishment knowing that she had maintained her composure throughout. Karen also thought about the lessons others might have learned from the evening. The staff and guards had handled the situation professionally, demonstrating patience, observation, and clear communication. Karen recognized that her actions had provided them with a subtle challenge, an opportunity to test their skills and maintain control without escalating conflict. She felt a sense of gratitude toward them, understanding that their professionalism had made her own success possible. In this way, the night had been a shared experience, a lesson for everyone involved. While reflecting, Karen realized that her reputation as a confident and bold individual had been reinforced by the evening's events. People would remember her ability to navigate tension with poise, her polite assertiveness, and her careful observation of social dynamics. This reputation brought both recognition and responsibility. Karen knew that the stories people told about her would shape how she was perceived, and she took this seriously. She wanted her reputation to reflect not just boldness but also intelligence, composure, and respect for others. As the night wore on, Karen allowed herself to relax. She thought about the small victories of the evening, The way she had engaged with staff politely, observed guards, movements, and navigated tension without causing conflict. Each success had been earned through careful planning, attention to detail, and thoughtful action. Karen appreciated the satisfaction that came from knowing she had acted with skill and intelligence, rather than relying on luck or impulsive decisions. Karen's thoughts turned to the future. She wondered how she could apply the lessons of the evening to other aspects of her life. The ability to read social cues, maintain composure under pressure, and test boundaries respectfully were valuable skills beyond the context of a single venue. Karen felt motivated to continue developing these abilities, knowing that they would help her navigate challenges, build stronger relationships, and maintain control in complex situations. As she prepared to head home, Karen felt a sense of closure. The events of the night had come to an end, and she had successfully managed the challenges she faced. The guards and staff would return to their routines, and the patrons would continue their evening, perhaps sharing stories of the curious and confident woman who had tested boundaries with grace. Corinne walked with a steady pace, her thoughts focused on reflection, learning, and the quiet satisfaction of a challenge well handled. On her way home, Corinne thought about the importance of patience and timing. Every action she had taken required careful consideration, and every success had been the result of strategic planning and awareness. She realized that the evening's events were a reminder of the value of mindfulness and thoughtfulness in all interactions. By paying attention to details, reading people carefully, and balancing confidence with respect, Karen had achieved a sense of control and accomplishment that was both empowering and rewarding. Karen also considered the role of curiosity in her actions. Her desire to understand the layout of the venue, the movements of the staff, and the behavior of the guards had driven much of the evening's activity. This curiosity had been paired with careful observation and polite engagement, allowing her to satisfy her interest while maintaining respect for others. Karen realized that curiosity, when balanced with awareness and consideration, could be a powerful tool for learning and personal growth. As she reached her home, Karen paused for a moment outside the door. The night had been long, challenging, and exciting, but it had also been a lesson in composure, strategy, and reflection. She felt a sense of gratitude for the experiences she had navigated and for the insights she had gained. Karen understood that each challenge she faced provided an opportunity to learn, grow, and refine her understanding of herself and the world around her. Finally, as she entered her home and settled into a quiet space, Karen allowed herself to relax fully. The events of the night, while complex and filled with subtle tension, had concluded successfully. She felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that she had acted with intelligence, composure, and respect throughout the evening. Karen reflected on the journey she had taken, from curiosity and observation to subtle challenges and careful navigation of confrontation, and recognized the personal growth that had come from it. In the quiet moments of reflection, Karen realized that her story was not just about testing boundaries or asserting confidence. It was about awareness, strategy, patience, and respect. It was about understanding people, observing details, and navigating complex social situations with composure and intelligence. The night had been a test, and she had passed it, learning valuable lessons along the way. Karen felt ready to face future challenges with the same careful thought, awareness, and quiet confidence that had guided her tonight. The evening had also strengthened her understanding of her own capabilities. Karen recognized that she could maintain control in tense situations, balance assertiveness with politeness, and navigate social dynamics effectively. She felt empowered by the knowledge that she could handle challenges thoughtfully and successfully. The night's experiences became a part of her personal story, a testament to her growth, skill, and understanding of the world around her. By the time Karen finally rested, she felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. The lessons of the evening would stay with her, guiding her in future interactions and helping her approach challenges with confidence, composure, and intelligence. She knew that her reputation would continue to reflect her boldness, curiosity, and careful thought, and she felt proud of the way she had handled the night's events. Corinne's journey had reached a satisfying conclusion, leaving her with insight, growth, and the quiet confidence that comes from mastering a complex challenge.